Hey there, I just wanted to share with you my top 5 lessons that I learned from my garden in 2023. Trust me, these made a huge difference. So let's dive right in and discover what made my gardening journey so special. This year, I spent loads of time, money, and energy trying to build up my small backyard garden so that I could grow more food, learn some food preservation techniques, and build habitat for local wildlife. I installed raised beds, in-ground beds, planted trees and flowers. I grew more fruits and veggies than I've ever grown. I recently moved into a new house with a great sized backyard that I can use to design the garden of my dreams. But before I dive into planning for next year, I want to take time to reflect on 2023's garden, what successes I had, the mistakes that I made, and all of the lessons learned that I can take into the new gardening year. Join me as I review my 2023 garden season, including my 5 key takeaways for new gardeners that are dreaming of having their first backyard garden. All right, number 1, cannot neglect your soil. This is, I'll say, both a success and a lesson learned. I knew that soil health was important when I went into this garden year. And so I did some research on local companies that provide compost. And I went along with a company that I trusted and thought was really awesome to bring in soil for my raised beds. One of the things that I really didn't invest time or energy into was learning how to grow my own soil at my own home. So that is one of the major things that I'm going to take away into next year's garden as well. While you can get great compost from folks in your area, it was definitely the more costly route to buy in all of my soil. And if I was able to grow some of my own soil on site, that would have provided me with great nutritious soil in an abundant supply, and it would have made gardening a lot less expensive. So while I'm probably still going to have to purchase some soil for 2024's garden because I'm going to be establishing entirely new beds, I would like to spend some time and energy trying to build up my both knowledge of soil health over the winter time while the garden is at rest, and be focused and purposeful about adding to my own backyard compost so that I can start building my own soil on site. All right, number 2, spending lots of money on your garden does not necessarily produce better results. I spent lots of money at different big box stores and garden centers around my area on different plants and shrubs and things that I bought throughout the garden season, and not all of them did super well. There were a couple plants that I bought, especially when I was in my stage of trying to invest in pollinator plants, where some of the ones that I put in the ground just didn't really seem to flourish. And what I noticed is that the ones that I got at the big box stores didn't really seem to provide a lot in terms of benefits to wildlife or just thriving in the natural environment in my yard. The plants that seemed to do the best were the ones that I got from local native plant sales. So my area, and I'm hoping in your area too, there is a growing movement of inviting folks to plant more native species. What that means is plants that would have grown up in this area. For me, it's Ohio, thousands and thousands of years ago, before humans changed the landscape in a major way. So those plants and animals that were here previously, they evolved together, they grew up together, they had these symbiotic relationships where the bugs and the insects and the flowers and the trees all work together. And when you put all those things together in an ecosystem, it works beautifully. When you disrupt that ecosystem by bringing in exotic plants and killing a lot of the native species, then your soil is out of whack. Then things don't quite work in a perfect balance. So there's a huge movement to add more native plants back in to our home landscapes, including our backyards, and I want to be a part of that movement. I know that it's going to help me to grow better fruits and veggies because it's going to bring more pollinators to my area, and it's just going to be better for the environment in general. And so I checked out some local sales through different park systems and local community centers. They had what we called native plant sales, where they sold locally things that small growers grew from seeds that they found or harvest responsibly, and grew these native plants, these plants that should have grown up in Ohio, that would have been here before we had, awesome houses and roads and streets and all this cool stuff, the plants that would have been in the environment here. So the plants that I got at those sales, as opposed to the plants that I got at big box stores, seem to do better. They seem to be healthier. They seem to thrive more. They seem to really flourish. And I saw, birds and bees and other things really get excited about those plants. So I'm definitely going to be planting more native plants and shopping local using my native plant sales and the local nurseries and growers in my area, as opposed to spending so much money at big box stores on your traditional plants that you think that you're supposed to plant. All right, 3, you should grow the varieties of plants that you love to eat. I say that this was definitely a success. Not everything that I tried to grow this year did really well. Picture my sweet potato plants. I definitely had an intention of growing the varieties of plants that I tend to eat the most of. So I knew I wanted a lot of tomatoes, bell peppers, onions. I wanted to have sweet potatoes, black beans, and corn was a fun one that I just wanted to throw in there just to see if I could grow it. And I had a lot of success this year. What I didn't have the most success with was the sweet potato varieties and some other things where I felt like I maybe was just spread a little too thin. I didn't plant enough of the crops that I wanted to get a large harvest of. And there were a few other varieties of things that I planted, like there were a bunch of cucumber plants that I just don't eat a ton of, and so I didn't have a great use for them. So the part of this that was successful, I think, was experimenting with growing the things that I actually want to eat. Because my ultimate goal is to be able to preserve food and to get more of the foods that I eat either purchased locally or grown on my own home and my own land. In order to really be able to offset my grocery budget, I need to grow things that I know how to preserve and store. So one of the most exciting things that I did this year was learning to preserve tomatoes into tomato sauce or marinara sauce that I could use for pizza and pasta and the things that I eat for weekly meals. The lesson that I learned here is that I'm gonna need way more tomatoes if I'm ever gonna build up to be able to grow a year's worth of tomatoes for my household. So I think what I'm going to do is simplify the varieties of tomatoes that I plant. Point number 4, don't overcomplicate your garden plan. In my excitement to grow new varieties of plants and grow new things that I had never grown before, I grew a lot of different varieties of things. I had handfuls of corn seeds from a bunch of different types of corn. I planted maybe 10 different types of tomatoes. It's better to have fewer crops and varieties that you're actually going to eat and then spend your energy learning how to grow those specific crops. That's better than planting 20 or 30 or 50 varieties of plants and then having to keep up with this really complicated garden plan of things that all have different planting times, need fertilized at different times, like different watering schedules. That is really complicated. And if you're growing a lot of things you've never grown before, you're likely going to make some missteps here. I would say I made a misstep here with my strawberries. When I planted my strawberries in my green stock, I got a little bit lazy and I said, well, I have all of this raised bed garden soil. I'll just put that in my containers for my green stock gardens, and that will be good enough for growing my fruit in. Unfortunately, that soil was not light and fluffy enough for being in those type of containers, and it just sort of weighed it down. It held water at the bottom, the roots rotted out, and I had to completely replant my strawberry plants. I had too many different things. If I was focused just on strawberries and just on tomatoes and just on a small handful of crops instead of I can't even remember how many varieties, but more than 30, probably like 50 different plants that I planted this. If I had focused on just trying to grow a few less types of plants, but a larger quantity of each one, I would have more that I could learn how to grow and preserve well, so that I would have more of a harvest that I could do preservation techniques and learn how to really build that crop into my yearly skill set, so that can be a thing that I can have and provide to my family, that I now can have a year's worth of strawberries in my freezer, or I have a year's worth of tomatoes canned on my shelf so that I won't have to run to the grocery store, every couple of days because I ran out of tomato sauce. Number 5, find your gardening routine. Everybody has a little bit of a different style of how they like to garden, how much they are focused on weeding, whether they want to be hand watering every day, whether they want to build in an irrigation system, what things are really important to them. Is organic gardening important to you? Is it important to you to be able to grow foods on site that you couldn't easily source at a grocery store or couldn't easily source at a farmer's market? Or are you gardening just for the sake of gardening? Do you mostly care about flowers because you want something beautiful and you want to be able to pick a bouquet and bring it into the house? Figure out what is your why for gardening, what gives you energy, and then from that, you can build out all of the steps behind it. For me, I know that I want healthy, fresh, organic food for my family, if possible, and I want to see if I can get it at a lower cost than just buying all of it at the grocery store. I also want to build that mind-body connection between myself and for my child, between us and the food that we eat, so that we know where our food comes from and we're more deeply connected with the land and the environment. I also want to feel empowered and self-reliant. There's something that's just so exciting about being able to eat something that you grew yourself. To know that these strawberries that I pulled off the plants in my green stalk in my backyard, I grew those strawberries. They came from my hard work, my effort, my garden, the sun and the soil and water that I put into it, and the beautiful plants working their magic produce these awesome fruits. And I also want to have fun with my garden. I use gardening as a way to relieve stress and to just share time with friends and family. I like to be out in the garden in the summertime. I like to soak in the sun. I like to be out there first thing in the morning watering. I like to see the sun come up, and I like to see the beauty of the garden. Those are the reasons for me why I'm gardening. So that tells me that the things that I want to build into my garden are things that are part of that routine. So I know that I like seeing the sunrise in the garden. So building into my routine is an early morning check on the garden. So early morning water, early morning harvest, those type of things are where I already know that I have a teeny bit of space in my day before my little one gets up, that I can run out to the garden, check things, see how they're doing, a little bit of water here, a little bit of something there, and then run back in and get back to the rest of my daily tasks. I also know that weekends work really well for me for big projects. This year, I was able to really be a weekend warrior. I built my raised beds in a weekend. I put up different projects around the garden using those long weekend days. I know that for bigger garden projects, using those weekend days is what's really going to help me be the most successful. Plants need consistent water, weeding, and nutrients in order to thrive. So think about how your daily life works and how you can build in those pieces into your life. So if I know that I enjoy being out in the garden first thing in the morning, I can build into my routine a little bit of time to go out for an early morning garden check, see if it needs anything, to do a little watering, quick harvest, something like that. I also know that for bigger projects, things that take more time, the time that I have the most of is on weekends, because I have a full-time job that I work during the week. So on the weekends, on those Saturdays or Sundays when my little one is napping, I get a big chunk of time where I can really work on heavy, intense projects that I can't do during the rest of the day in between other things. So because I know that those are my pockets of time, and I know what I enjoy most about the garden, I can build in my gardening into my routine. Having it as part of the routine helps that you be consistent, which is going to help you be successful in the garden. Things that we do that sabotage our garden are planting lots of plants, getting really excited, and then forgetting about them for multiple weeks and not watering or checking on them. That will not lead to success in the garden. So think about your daily routine as it is. Think about what things you like. Think about where you have those little pockets of time, and plan your gardening work into those pockets of time where you have them. In conclusion, my 2023 garden was a huge success with a lot of lessons learned. I learned the importance of soil health and also that spending a lot of money doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have more success in the garden. It's important to shop local and plant native varieties wherever you can. Additionally, I learned the value of planting the fruit and veggie crops that I love to eat and not overcomplicating my garden plan. Lastly, I learned that to keep a thriving garden, you need to build that as a habit into your daily routine. Lastly, I learned that in order to have a thriving garden, I had to find my gardening style and find a way to build it into my daily routine. I hope that these 5 key takeaways can inspire and help motivate you as a new gardener to build the backyard garden of your dreams and experience the joy and satisfaction of growing your own food. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me today. Let me know in the comments below what were your biggest takeaways from your 2023 garden if you had one, or if you're just getting started and thinking about 2024's garden, tell me what's one thing that you're hoping to do. If you would like to see what my garden looked like at the peak of the season, I'll link my August garden tour video right here, as well as my empty house tour. I'll link up here as well if you're interested in what I'm dreaming about for the new house. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!